Rise with India podcast on ET Now.
Good morning and a very warm welcome to the ET Now Rise with India podcast. I'm your host Rohit. This is a big week for corporate earnings and we will report all the action. This morning, an upbeat Wall Street is hinting at a strong start for the Wall Street as well, with numbers from HDFC Bank and DMart supporting the sentiment. Globally, oil is showing no signs of a cool-off, so watch out for that factor. And back home, power plants are gradually finding stable coal supplies. Petrol and diesel prices on Sunday were hiked once again by 35 paise per litre. The price of petrol in Delhi rose to its highest ever level of 105 rupees and 84 paise per litre and 112 rupees thereabouts in Mumbai. Several brands and restaurants have started to share a higher percentage of revenue with malls as business has rebounded almost to pre-pandemic levels. This is in contrast to low pandemic era agreements with shopping centers as malls had to close during lockdowns and then saw fewer customers when they reopened. India's big four IT companies TCS, Infosys, Wipro and HCL Tech have seen their combined employee strength rise by over 1 lakh in the first 6 months of this fiscal. That's 13 times more than the corresponding period of the previous year after the pandemic had struck. India's power consumption grew over 3% in the first half of October, showing recovery amid coal shortage at electricity generation plants. Meanwhile, India's coal import registered a decline of 2.7% in August this year amid global supply chain shortages. The Finance Ministry will soon move the cabinet to seek approval for setting up of a company for transfer and subsequent monetization of land and non-core assets of privatization-bound CPSEs. The US has overtaken China as India's largest trading partner thanks to faster growth during the first 9 months of 2021. During January to September, two-way trade between India and US jumped 50% to $28 billion. A comparatively slower 46% rise with China saw that bilateral trade at $25 billion. India is poised to cross the landmark 100 crore COVID-19 vaccination dose this week. The vaccines administered suggest about 70% of the population getting at least one dose and about 30% of the population that has got two doses. Describing India's response to COVID-19 as swift and substantial, the IMF has noted that India has continued with labor reforms and privatization despite the pandemic. Evergreen Group CEO is holding talks with investment banks and creditors over a possible restructuring and asset sale. Evergrande has been scrambling to divest some of its assets to raise cash, efforts that have not yielded much success. Meanwhile, Dow ended higher on Friday as better than expected third quarter numbers fired up US stocks to their best week since June. Back home, quarterly earnings and global cues will be the major sentiment driver for stock markets this week. The Dow and the SGX are pointing to a promising start to the week. Among major earnings to be announced this week are Ultratech Cement, ACC, HUL, Asian Paints, ICICI Bank, a few PSU banks and Reliance. The street will also take cues from strong quarterly earnings of HDFC Bank and Avenue Supermart over the weekend. FPIs have turned net sellers of about 1,500 crore rupees in October so far, reversing the trend of net buying of previous 2 months due to depreciation in the rupee and global factors. On Thursday, FII's net bought shares worth about 1,682 crore rupees, while DII's net sold shares were worth about 1,750 crore rupees. Let's talk about some of the active stocks this morning. HDFC Bank has reported an 18% rise in its consolidated net profit at 9,096 crore rupees for the second quarter, even as there's a marginal increase in bad loans. Avenue Supermarts, which owns and operates retail chain DMart, has reported a two-fold rise in its consolidated net profit at 418 crore rupees. Tata Power is in talks with large pension fund and sovereign asset managers, including Canada Pension Fund and Singapore's GIC, to raise at least $500 million ahead of a planned IPO of its renewable energy unit, according to a news report in the Economic Times. PNB Housing Finance has shelved its proposed 4,000 crore rupee preferential issue to private equity giant Carlyle Group and co-investors. The company cited protracted legal delays in getting regulatory approval as key reason. Bank of India has announced a cut in its interest rates on home loans and vehicle loans by 35 basis points and 50 basis points respectively. Dixon Technologies has started manufacturing 5G millimeter waves smartphones, which will be the first set of devices to be exported from India. Forging has acquired Cafoma Auto Parts for a total consideration of 33 crore rupees. Cafoma is one of the largest independent suppliers of machined crankshafts. DGCA has temporarily suspended Spicejet's license for transportation of dangerous goods over alleged violations. News reports suggest that the suspension is for 30 days, during which Spicejet will not be allowed to carry dangerous goods, including lithium-ion batteries, on domestic as well as international flights. Reliance Brands is picking up a 40% minority stake in renowned fashion designer Manish Malhotra's company for an undisclosed sum. To recap, earnings will define the trend this week, with markets perched near all-time high. 19,000 seems to be the next key resistance on Nifty. That's all from my end. Thank you for listening in. Do send in your feedback. This is your host Rohit signing off. Goodbye and take care.
The Rise with India podcast on ET Now.